You wake up, check the clock, and it reads 2:47 a.m. You shuffle toward the bathroom in a haze of semi-consciousness, crawl back into bed, and then the exact same cycle repeats itself at 4:15. For years, you have casually dismissed this inconvenience as an inevitable part of growing older. But what if I informed you that across the vast majority of clinical cases I encounter, and I have evaluated thousands, your urinary bladder bears almost zero responsibility for the disruption? I am Dr. Eduardo Perez Alba, and over the next 18 minutes, I am going to walk you through the actual chain reaction dragging you awake throughout the night, along with precise, actionable steps to break that cycle starting tonight before you drift off to sleep. Section 1. The falsehood you have been fed. Let me begin with a candid confession most physicians hesitate to make. When a patient past 60 walks into the clinic and reports waking up 3 or 4 times nightly to void, the reflex response from modern medicine is almost invariably to blame bladder dysfunction, suspect prostate enlargement, or write it off as standard aging, offering generic advice like drinking less fluids, prescribing a pill, and telling the patient to accept it. That standard reply is not completely incorrect, but it remains dangerously incomplete. Here's the statistic that should shock you into full attention. Published research investigating nocturia among older demographics reveals that nocturnal polyuria, the clinical term designating your kidneys generating an abnormally excessive volume of urine specifically throughout the dark hours, occurs in up to 77% of older women, and a staggering 93% of older men suffering from nighttime awakenings. Those figures stem from peer-reviewed inquiries documented throughout clinical pharmacology literature on nocturia and have been consistently replicated across diverse populations. It is not your bladder overreacting, nor is it your prostate misbehaving. Rather, it is your kidneys slipping into overdrive at the precise worst operational hour. Furthermore, here lies the uncomfortable reality. If you fall within that 77% majority, no bladder medication on earth will entirely resolve your issue because you are directing treatment toward the wrong organ entirely. I want you to anchor that thought in your mind, because your kidneys operate this way for a specific underlying reason originating much earlier in your daily routine than you might imagine. First, however, permit me to reveal a biological detail almost nobody shares, even among medical specialists. Your brain generates a dedicated hormone every single night, or is biologically programmed to do so, whose exclusive function is commanding your kidneys to essentially take the night off. When this chemical messenger operates effectively, you can slumber uninterrupted for 7 or 8 consecutive hours without a single restroom visit. When it malfunctions, and research demonstrates that post-age 60, it frequently loses its efficacy. Your kidneys never receive the memo instructing them to throttle down. Instead, they persist in filtering and generating fluid, leaving your bladder to fill continuously. That essential substance is designated as antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, commonly referenced as vasopressin. Throughout your younger decades, your physique synthesized it exquisitely, peaking right around the time sleep took hold so your kidneys dialed back and you rested soundly through the night. Yet what scientific literature actually indicates is that ADH production drops off naturally with advancing years. More precisely, older adults exhibit a flattened circadian rhythm regarding ADH, meaning the nocturnal surge previously safeguarding your slumber either weakens significantly or vanishes completely. Consequently, your kidneys lose their regulatory cue and maintain near daytime filtration rates across the entire night. Immediately, therefore, two distinct forces are working against you: a renal system operating flat out when it should be resting, paired with a hormonal signal grown far too feeble to halt it. Now matters grow truly fascinating because that represents merely the initial chapter of the narrative. Before we delve further into the breakdown, drop your name and your viewing location down in the comments below, as I genuinely want to recognize who is sharing this space with me today. Every single comment gets read personally. Every last one. Section 2. The concealed leg-to-bladder pipeline that nobody ever explains. Allow me to introduce a patient I will call Gerald, a 71-year-old retired engineer possessing an exceptionally sharp mind who sought my guidance out of sheer frustration. Having already cycled through two separate bladder pharmaceuticals and slashed his evening fluid consumption down to practically nothing, yet continuing to wake up 3 times every night. When I inquired about his typical daily routine, he offered a response I encounter with alarming frequency. I remained seated quite a bit. I'm retired, so I spend my hours working on jigsaw puzzles, watching news broadcasts, and reading. That single declaration communicated nearly everything I needed to understand. Here is the underlying physiology that completely alters the picture for individuals resembling Gerald. Whenever you maintain an upright posture, sitting, standing, or moving about, gravity continuously exerts a downward pull on your bodily fluids, including blood, lymphatic fluid, and interstitial moisture residing between cells, causing all of it to migrate southward toward your lower legs, ankles, and feet. In youth, your system manages this challenge exquisitely as your veins remain elastic and robust, featuring microscopic one-way internal valves sealing tightly to drive blood upward in defiance of gravity, while your leg muscles function like dynamic pumps with every step taken or weight shift executed. Past the age of 60, however, this circulatory machinery deteriorates. Venous walls sacrifice elasticity, valves fail to seal competently, and when combined with prolonged periods of sedentary sitting, which characterizes the lifestyle of most retired adults, muscular pumping action plummets. Consequently, fluid slowly leaks outward from your circulatory pathways to pool within the interstitial tissues of your lower extremities. You likely recognize these manifestations without ever linking them to your nocturnal bathroom excursions. Indentations left by sock bands persisting across your skin late into the afternoon, ankles feeling slightly puffy or restricted by evening, or legs feeling noticeably heavier at day's end than upon waking. Those sensations are far from random occurrences. They represent trapped fluid lingering outside your active circulation, remaining entirely inaccessible to your renal filters. Here's the critical realization. Your kidneys possess the capacity to filter solely what circulates directly inside your bloodstream, meaning that pooled fluid sequestered within your lower limbs remains essentially invisible to them across daylight hours. Then nighttime arrives, and you recline horizontally in bed. The exact instant you adopt that posture, gravity's equation inverts completely, leaving your legs resting level with your heart. That fluid accumulation that spent the entire day pooling now initiates a migration backward into your systemic circulation, slowly at first, then gathering steady momentum, driving your overall blood volume upward. Sensing this expansion, your cardiac tissue releases its own specialized hormone, a peptide designated as atrial natriuretic peptide, or ANP, which issues a direct command instructing your kidneys to accelerate filtration and discharge the surplus liquid as urine. Consequently, your kidneys, already starved of the ADH braking signal we discussed earlier, now receive an active acceleration command originating straight from your heart. The inevitable result causes your bladder to fill at a rapid rate. Furthermore, this phenomenon fails to occur as a single event, because that sequestered leg fluid fails to re-enter circulation all at once, instead seeping back gradually across multiple hours. Thus, you rouse at midnight to empty your bladder, return to bed as further fluid shifts, wake again at 2 a.m. as additional volume redistributes, and find yourself upright once more at 4 a.m. Your bladder is simply executing its mandated function by processing what the kidneys deliver, while the kidneys respond directly to the volume supplied by your vascular circulation. The uninterrupted chain proceeds cleanly from legs to bloodstream, onward to the heart, down through the kidneys into the bladder, and finally culminating in you staring wide awake at 3 a.m. Restricting evening fluid intake fails to impact this physiological chain at any point, because the liquid processed by your kidneys did not originate from beverages consumed following dinner, but rather accumulated within your lower limbs starting from sunrise. Gerald, incidentally, transitioned from waking up 3 times nightly down to a single interruption, and occasionally sleeping completely through, via lifestyle modifications bearing zero connection to his bladder. If this information is aiding your understanding thus far, type the number 2 down in the comments right now. It takes merely 2 seconds and signals that you remain locked in step with me, as the upcoming insights carry even greater importance, and you will certainly wish to avoid missing what follows. Section 3. The evening routines silently feeding the flames. Let me pose a question. What did you consume last night between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m.? Most individuals fail to associate their evening supper with events unfolding at 2 hours in the morning, yet the biochemical bridge connecting them proves direct. And once recognized, it remains impossible to ignore. Hidden sodium serves as our primary culprit, and the danger stems not from the kitchen salt shaker, but rather from sodium lurking in plain sight within a single slice of bread, a modest portion of cheese, canned light broth, packaged crackers, or the subtle saline coatings of supermarket deli meats. Such provisions rarely taste overtly salty, yet they pack substantial sodium quantities. Observe the metabolic consequences. Upon ingesting sodium during evening hours, your system, striving to maintain safe blood sodium concentrations, clings tenaciously to water, drawing moisture outward from cells and tissues to dilute the sodium load, which paradoxically expands the overall volume of fluid sequestered within your lower tissues, including your legs. Consequently, you retire for the night harboring even greater fluid pooling in your extremities than would otherwise occur. Subsequently, your kidneys, tasked with clearing that sodium overnight, pull water along for the ride because sodium and fluid invariably travel coupled throughout renal filtration pathways, meaning extra sodium demanding clearance mandates increased water excretion, generating surging urine production and enforcing multiple bathroom excursions. Our second evening trigger involves blood sugar surges, a modest dessert, a piece of fruit, or evening herbal tea sweetened with honey. These appear entirely benign, and in isolation for youthful, robust metabolic profiles, they largely are. However, observe the impact of a nocturnal glucose spike inside a physiological system past 60. First, blood sugar elevates. Kidneys possess a functional threshold sitting roughly around 180 milligrams per deciliter, surpassing which glucose begins spilling directly into the urinary stream. When glucose spills, it drags fluid alongside it via osmotic pull, a phenomenon designated as osmotic diuresis, serving as the identical mechanism driving polyuria among uncontrolled diabetic patients. Numerous seniors, particularly those navigating prediabetes or early insulin resistance, reach or approach that threshold following an evening carbohydrate load completely unaware. Thus, what registers as an innocent sweet treat biochemically triggers a timed water excretion event synchronized precisely with your slumber. Second, even absent that specific threshold crossover, a separate mechanism warrants comprehension. Research published in the journal Diabetes established that insulin, even when circulating at standard physiological levels, actively signals renal nephrons to retain sodium rather than discharge it. Therefore, an evening sugar indulgence provoking an insulin surge may cause your kidneys to hoard sodium temporarily, requiring that retained sodium to undergo delayed clearance later throughout the dark hours. While the direct causal chain, linking evening sugar directly to nighttime urination, may lack isolated documentation, the foundational physiology, insulin-mediated sodium retention paired with subsequent delayed excretion, remains thoroughly verified and establishes a plausible contributory route. Our third trigger, critical due to widespread misunderstanding, involves evening alcohol consumption, even restricted to a single glass. Ethanol acts as a direct ADH antagonist, actively suppressing that vital hormone discussed earlier whose sole purpose is commanding renal deceleration during sleep. A solitary drink can meaningfully depress ADH functionality across multiple hours. Thus, at the exact juncture when your body should be signaling your kidneys to rest, alcohol blocks that transmission entirely. Simultaneously, alcohol disrupts sleep architecture. You may fall asleep faster, a detail people readily notice, yet you forfeit restorative, deep, slow-wave sleep. Your neurological arousal threshold drops sharply, leaving you generating heightened urine volumes while experiencing shallow, easily fractured slumber. Merging those factors generates a self-sustaining cycle, proving nearly impossible to shatter. Now, link all three elements together. Concealed dietary sodium burdens your legs with surplus fluid. Evening sugar initiates a delayed diuretic cascade, and alcohol blocks the solitary hormone engineered to shield your rest from renal activity. Encountering any single factor complicates your night, but experiencing all three combined renders waking up 2 or 3 times virtually guaranteed, regardless of how strictly you restrict fluids following 6 p.m. Having grasped the root causes driving this phenomenon, we arrive at the segment capable of genuinely transforming your existence, anchored by a targeted pre-bedtime routine engineered around the physiology just explored, designed to shift fluid processing out of your sleep cycles and back into your waking hours, initiating tonight rather than waiting a month or scheduling specialist appointments. Section 4. The pre-bed protocol resetting everything. Everything I'm about to outline centers upon a singular foundational principle. While you cannot halt your physiological fluid processing, you can actively manipulate when that processing occurs. That constitutes the entirety of the strategy. Transition the fluid clearing mechanism into evening hours while consciousness remains active, sparing your kidneys from managing that workload at 2 earlier in the morning. Here is how to execute it. Step 1 involves strategically activating your lower limbs throughout daylight hours. Every single contraction of your calf musculature serves as a secondary pump, forcing blood and interstitial fluid upward against gravity. Designated as the skeletal muscle pump, this represents a core mechanism preventing fluid accumulation in your lower extremities. The single most impactful habit here requires no gym membership, boiling down simply to avoiding continuous sitting exceeding 60 to 90 minutes at a stretch. Establish a gentle chime reminder, stand upright, stroll toward the kitchen, and perform deliberate heel raises by elevating onto your toes before lowering your heels across 20 repetitions. This modest movement meaningfully engages your calf pump machinery. Executing this consistently across the day ensures you arrive at bedtime with dramatically reduced fluid pooling in your limbs. Minimized daytime pooling translates directly to reduced nocturnal circulatory return, which lightens the operational burden on your renal filters while you rest. Step 2 requires front-loading your hydration intake, a directive contradicting intuitive human behavior. Many seniors troubled by nocturnal urination instinctively restrict daytime water consumption while concentrating fluid intake later, imagining they will simply hydrate prior to sleep, which represents precisely the incorrect timing. Your objective demands consuming the bulk of your daily fluid volume prior to 3 p.m., granting your kidneys the maximum available span of waking hours to process ingested liquids. By evening, the primary filtration work stands complete, leaving minimal unprocessed fluids circulating within your system at bedtime. This directive does not mandate zero fluids post 3 p.m. Sharing a few sips alongside an early supper remains entirely acceptable. Yet you desire your renal system operating at peak output during high noon rather than midnight. Step 3 demands auditing your 6 p.m. dinner plate, grounded in our previous discussion, / sodium content from your evening meal without sacrificing culinary flavor. Opt for fresh proteins over packaged alternatives, seasoning dishes utilizing aromatic herbs and lemon juice rather than heavy salt sprinkles, while avoiding bread, canned broths, or processed snacks as evening staples. Limit or eliminate post-dinner sugary treats. And should you enjoy an alcoholic beverage, shift it to an earlier hour or omit it altogether on nights demanding optimal sleep architecture. Step 4, representing the approach frequently evoking the greatest surprise, involves establishing a pre-bed leg elevation window. Approximately 60 to 90 minutes prior to retiring for sleep, recline comfortably on your sofa or bed while elevating your lower limbs above the level of your heart by resting them vertically against a wall, propped upon tiered pillows or supported by a sofa armrest. The exact posture matters far less than achieving an angle where legs sit higher than the heart, maintaining this position for 20 to 30 minutes. This practice intentionally stimulates fluid mobilization. While consciousness remains fully engaged, trapped lower limb fluid begins migrating back into your vascular system. Your heart registers this volume expansion and instructs the kidneys to filter. Your renal filters launch into action, and your bladder fills accordingly. Subsequently, prior to climbing into bed, you deliberately visit the restroom. Even absent an overwhelming urge, you successfully transfer the kidney's primary nocturnal workload into the hour preceding sleep, ensuring your bladder begins the night as empty as possible. Furthermore, having proactively cleared the majority of stored leg fluid, you face vastly diminished fluid return infiltrating your bloodstream at 2 a.m. Step 5 addresses ambient temperature within the final hour. A frequently neglected variable, maintaining a cooler sleeping environment curtails generalized vasodilation and decelerates fluid mobilization during initial sleep stages. Keep your bedroom comfortably cool and steer clear of scorching hot showers immediately prior to bed, as thermal extremes trigger vasodilation, accelerating fluid redistribution. Conversely, taking a lukewarm shower 90 minutes before retiring has been demonstrated to genuinely enhance sleep quality by prompting the body's innate thermal drop response. If these principles continue aligning logically for you, type the number 4 into the comments right now, as I am eager to observe who remains actively engaged with me. We have only reached our midpoint, and several upcoming indicators represent manifestations. Numerous individuals fail to connect until acquiring deeper medical insight. Section 5. Recognizing when to transition away from self-management and consult a physician. Now, absolute honesty is required here because this presentation aims to empower you rather than substitute professional medical intervention. The physiological pattern detailed, daytime lower limb fluid pooling, nocturnal redistribution, and renal overactivity, proves common, thoroughly comprehended by science, and highly responsive to the lifestyle modifications just reviewed, with the majority of individuals implementing these steps consistently noting substantial improvement within 1 to 2 weeks. Nevertheless, specific clinical scenarios involve underlying pathologies driving identical symptoms, and recognizing them remains essential. Should you experience marked lower extremity edema that persists, transcending minor sock indentations to manifest as prominent swelling failing to resolve overnight, this can signal heart failure, chronic renal disease, or venous insufficiency demanding formal clinical assessment. Should you wake 3 or more times nightly accompanied by an urgent, yet remarkably meager voiding volume, that specific pattern, omitted from today's primary focus, points directly toward overactive bladder syndromes, underlying urinary infections, or among male patients, prostatic enlargement, necessitating an entirely distinct diagnostic discussion. Should excessive thirst accompany frequent voiding, that dual presentation serves as a glaring red flag for uncontrolled diabetes, requiring prompt diagnostic testing. Furthermore, should our outlined protocol yield zero measurable improvement across 2 to 3 weeks, that outcome provides vital diagnostic intelligence implying an underlying medical driver, whether hormonal, cardiac, or renal in origin, requiring definitive identification, meaning you must avoid delaying that consultation. The lifestyle framework remains exceptionally potent, yet functions optimally when targeting the precise underlying etiology, making it vital to understand your unique physiological category. Your doctor, armed with accurate history, can validate these findings. I am not suggesting you avoid seeking medical evaluation. Rather, I urge you to attend informed, enabling a far more productive dialogue than simply repeating, "I keep waking up during the night." Section 6. The unacknowledged sleep apnea connection. Here lies the revelation genuinely startling most of my clinical patients, serving as the final puzzle piece. Numerous adults past 60 experiencing frequent nocturnal awakenings harbor an undiagnosed contributory disorder, obstructive sleep apnea. This condition does not exclusively manifest as theatrical, booming snoring, though that remains common. Rather, it frequently involves subtle, partially obstructed respiratory airflow triggering recurring microarousals throughout sleep. Note why this bears such direct relevance to urination specifically. Whenever breathing momentarily pauses during sleep, even for fleeting 10 to 15-second intervals, internal chest pressure drops sharply, leading your heart, sensing this negative pressure gradient, to misinterpret the signal as an indicator of excessive blood volume, prompting it to release ANP, that identical cardiac hormone analyzed earlier, which commands renal nephrons to accelerate filtration and discharge heightened fluid volumes. Consequently, every single apnea event dispatches a false fluid overload directive to your kidneys, repeating across multiple episodes hourly throughout the entire night. The inevitable outcome? Your renal system generates vastly elevated urine volumes, driven neither by excessive beverage consumption nor by simple lower limb fluid shifts, but rather by false pressure cues dispatched by your cardiac tissue every time your upper airway transiently collapses. Scientific literature confirms that treating sleep apnea utilizing continuous positive airway pressure, CPAP therapy, markedly diminishes nocturnal voiding frequency across numerous patients, achieved using zero bladder pharmaceuticals and zero fluid restrictions, relying entirely upon a machine maintaining airway patency and halting deceptive cardiac signaling.
If you snore habitually, if a partner observes you gasping or experiencing breathing lapses, or if you awaken unrefreshed despite logging 7 full hours of rest, pursuing investigation proves worthwhile. Home sleep testing offers a convenient method to confirm or exclude this diagnosis. For individuals where sleep apnea and lower limb fluid redistribution occur simultaneously, a far more common overlap than generally recognized, both pathological mechanisms fuel the identical symptom, meaning treating solely one resolves only half the dilemma. Let us synthesize our core takeaways. Frequent nighttime urination following age 60 is typically propelled by 3 primary drivers. Diminished ADH generation, permitting unchecked overnight renal filtration. Fluid pooling within the lower legs throughout daylight hours, flooding systemic circulation upon reclining. And evening lifestyle habits, encompassing sodium, sugars, and alcohol, quietly accelerating the entire cascade. The solution avoids simplistic fluid deprivation, hinging instead upon timing optimization, migrating fluid processing into your active waking hours by elevating lower limbs prior to bed, front-loading daily hydration, cleaning up your 6 p.m. nutritional plate, and recognizing that should these adjustments fail to shift your outcomes, a final hidden factor demands attention, as your very sleep architecture may be acting as the saboteur. In our upcoming video, I will demonstrate precisely how compromised sleep quality fosters a hormonal environment exacerbating every single issue examined today, along with concrete corrective actions. That installment may represent the missing jigsaw piece for many among you. I am Dr. Eduardo Perez Alba, and I will see you there.